Folks, I'm here in Chicago, and what they say about the city is true. It's a gang-infested war zone. Look at these gangs that have completely taken over. Just roaming around out in the open, no police presence, chaos, lawlessness. Yeah, just wait till the troops get here. They're gonna clean you out of this city. Your days are numbered, my friend. What the hell are you looking at? Oh, they're gonna kick you out of here too, buddy. You all think you're so tough. Well, when the troops get here, you're all gonna be running scared like a bunch of little wusses. Hey, get away. Much has been made recently about the crime in Chicago, or Chirac as its detractors like to call it. The situation is supposedly so bad that the president has been threatening to send in troops to get the situation under control, a plan that his supporters largely seem to be in favor of. You know, because sending troops into actual Iraq turned out so well. Hey, speaking of which, Iraq?
Have you said thank you once?
Now, I don't usually like to weigh in on political issues, but I feel like this one hits close to home for me because Chicago is literally my home. I've lived in Chicago for a couple years now, and I feel like I have a perspective to add as a resident. So basically, there's been a long-running smear campaign against Chicago, and part of that involves disparaging the city with labels like war zone, hellhole, killing field, ghetto, shithole, and that has now culminated in the president saying the city's crime is so bad that he's going to send troops into the city to get things under control. The White House published a press release making a case for this, and it includes a list of 27 recent crimes that occurred over roughly 2.5 months. Now, there's a couple issues with this list I'd like to quickly point out. First is that the second item on the list is not actually a crime. It's a news story about a young boy who accidentally shot himself. Very sad, a tragedy, not a crime. My second issue is that 2 of these crimes are the exact same incident. So bang up job on the press release, fellas. I mean, if this is the official case being presented to justify sending in the military to patrol a US city, I don't think it's asking too much that you dot the I's and cross the T's, you know? But look, the crimes listed are real and they're very troubling. Listen to these from just the past month. 3 teens committed an armed carjacking, 3 people shot at a birthday party, 2 people shot dead in a Walgreens parking lot, a man was fatally stabbed at the park, 2 officers were shot in a standoff. Oh, oops. Actually, those are all crimes that happened in Miami, Florida. My bad. I thought Republicans had the whole crime thing under control. That's weird. Maybe the most annoying part of all this is the haters who scurry into the comment section of any positive post about Chicago to talk shit about it. Like, there could just be a post of a person going, I like Chicago. And there will be a comment that's like, yeah, what about the crime?
I love Chicago.
Chicago is awesome.
Chicago is where it's at.
I love Chicago. It's so beautiful.
Oh my gosh, I cannot get over this city.
Until you get gunned down, yeah, I would too. Great city to get murked in, I'm sure. Chicago is doomed with illegal criminals. Chicago voted best big city 9 years in a row. Laughing emojis. By who? Lies, lies, lies. Democrats love to lie like someone else we all know as the great deceiver. Nobody with half a brain would ever think it's even a good place to visit. Chicago breaks all-time tourism record. Chicago is still a whole ghetto. Scientists say Chicago sunset can boost your mood by 90%. Then the sun goes down and you get shot. This is the city they're trying to warn you about. Turn those bikes around and pedal south and then relate your experience. Now, fun fact, they actually are pedaling south in this video, which this commenter would know if they actually lived in Chicago. Go farther south, I dare you to. Keep going south on that bike path and you'll see how safe it is. Keep riding in that direction for about 5 miles and then show us some footage. Okay, I will. As the commenter suggested, I hopped on a bike, went down to the spot where that Instagram was filmed, and started pedaling south, as I have done many times. By the way, I apologize about the low quality of this video. My camera's built-in stabilization is terrible, and I had to digitally stabilize the hell out of this footage. I know it looks like I'm underwater. So online, you'll also see a lot of comments that say, oh, you think it's not that bad, huh? Well, go to the most dangerous part of the city at the most dangerous time of night, and then tell me what it's like. Go to the south side at 1:30 in the morning, use a wide shot, and don't bring security. I'll wait. What kind of argument is that? Yeah, if you seek out the worst parts of the city, they're gonna be bad. Where is that not true? By the way, there actually was one part of the bike ride that was scary because the lights were out and I couldn't see 20 feet in front of me. But otherwise, it was a very chill bike ride. I passed by probably 30 other people who were also biking, jogging, walking, or just chilling. All in all, I rode 7.5 miles south. There you go. This is the south on the trail. I made it to the south, and I didn't get shot even once. I also didn't get hit by any vehicles because Chicago has an 18-mile long trail exclusively for bikes and pedestrians that goes north to south. It's one of the best things about the city, in my opinion. Haters don't like any depiction of Chicago that doesn't fit their narrative of the city being a hellhole. You show a nice part of the city and they're like, no, only show the bad parts, no. But the worst type of comment is a category I like to call completely made up horse shit from a horse butt. When I went there, I seen 2 people get killed and 10 more injured, and I left the next day. Even on the good part of town, you're likely to be mugged or murdered for your wallet. Hooray for lying! And the really annoying thing is some of the most vocal haters don't even live in Chicago. This is something residents have picked up on, and it's inspired what I feel like is becoming the unofficial new slogan of Chicago. Shut the f up about Chicago, you don't live here. People who don't live in Chicago think it's like this. But it's actually more like this. Look, I hate to break it to the haters out there, but for the most part, people in Chicago are just having regular, mundane days like anybody else. It's very possible to live a boring life in Chicago, if that's what you want. In my few years living here, I've never witnessed any violent crime, I've never heard any gunshots. I've talked to people who have lived here much longer than I have, who told me that they've never witnessed any violent crime either. The only crime I've witnessed with my own 2 eyes is a couple of shoplifting incidents and the toppings people put on hot dogs. So all these violent crimes, these are just news stories to most people here. Now, I'm not trying to hand-wave the crime in Chicago. There is crime, and relative to other cities in the US, it is quite high. New York City has 30% fewer homicides despite having 3 times the population. That's pretty noteworthy, but still, the crime situation is simply blown out of proportion by the media and by people who have a vendetta against the city. Let's just put the crime into perspective. First off, some areas of the city have worse crime than others, just like another place called every other city in the country. Chicago is made up of neighborhoods, and some neighborhoods have 2 or 3 times the crime rate of others. So the frequency of crime depends heavily on where you are in the city. Second of all, there was a total of 573 homicides last year in a city of 2.5 million people. 2.5 million. That's more than the entire population of Nebraska. Imagine sending the military into Nebraska because 573 people were murdered over the span of 12 months. Yes, Chicago's raw number of homicides is the highest in the country, but it's also the 3rd most populated city in the country. Chicago's homicide rate per person is not the highest of any city in the country. I'm just using Wikipedia here. If we sort violent crime per 100,000 people, Chicago comes out to number 92. If we sort by murder specifically per 100,000 people, Chicago comes out to number 22. Also, I can't prove this, but I'd wager a lot of these homicides are gang-on-gang violence. The shootings that happen are often like somebody walked up to somebody else, shot them multiple times, and then bolted. They sound like very targeted attacks. Now, even if the shootings are mostly gang-on-gang violence, I still don't want that happening in my city, especially since sometimes innocent bystanders get caught in the crossfire. But I'm just making the point, if you're a regular person not involved in criminal activity, your chances of getting killed in Chicago are very low. So you'll get a lot of defensive and sarcastic attitudes from Chicago residents about this stuff, and it's not because they don't care about crime. This may be shocking to hear, but people who live in Chicago also don't like crime in Chicago. This dismissive, eye-rolling kind of attitude is a response to attacks against the city that are complete hyperbole, calling it a war zone or a killing field or a hellhole or making up ridiculous horror stories. That is all so absurdly at odds with most people's lived experience in this city. There are people who say things like, Chicago is so dangerous, I would never even set foot there. Brother, I have seen children walk around this city unattended. Literal children. And you're afraid to step foot here? The fear-mongering just gets so ridiculous and absurd and insane. I don't know. I feel like I'm starting to sound like Ben Shapiro.
It's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's patently absurd. Anybody with a half-functioning brain wouldn't believe this. These people are unhinged.
Hey, by the way, can someone tell Ben Shapiro to tilt his head up? Talking with your head tilted down like this makes you look sinister. A common response to positive photos and videos of the city is to say, you're only showing the nice parts. Why don't you go to such and such area and film that and show us what that looks like? Hey, you realize the nice parts of Chicago are also Chicago. When people say things like Chicago is a war zone, they're not saying this particular region of Chicago is a war zone. They're saying Chicago is a war zone. Chicago is a hellhole. That's what residents are responding to. Now, even if we did agree that the crime situation in Chicago is out of control, sending in troops isn't a good solution. I don't deny that sending in troops would probably reduce crime, temporarily. If Washington, D.C. is anything to go by, crime probably would drop and grass would be trimmed. But what happens when the troops leave? Crime is just going to come right back. Troops are not a long-term solution. They're a temporary band-aid. They're not even trained to handle crime. Hey, if you want more forces standing around to deter crime, why not provide funding to hire more police who are trained to handle crime and know their way around the city because they live in it? I have no problem with the federal government offering assistance to help Chicago with its crime problem. If the president came to Chicago and stood next to the governor and the mayor and said, "We're going to work closely with Chicago officials on a long-term solution to reduce crime in this city," I'd be like, cool. I'm not a fan of the president, but I would respect that. Though to be fair, if he did come to Chicago, I don't think he'd be met with a warm welcome. But still, it would at least be a respectable move. If they actually wanted to help, they could offer financial aid or offer more assistance from the FBI to solve homicides. But the president doesn't want to do that. Why? Well, everyone's got their theories. My theory is that it's a matter of optics. I think this is his showbiz instincts kicking in. He wants spectacle. He wants theatrics. It's the same reason he wanted to build a giant wall to deal with immigration, even though there were more effective options available. Because a giant wall stretching across the country is a striking visual. He liked the spectacle of it. So why doesn't he want to expand and strengthen the existing police force? Well, where's the spectacle in that? It's a more striking visual to have troops walking through the streets of cities. It's big and flashy. If he had his way, there'd probably be troops parachuting in from the sky. Despite the president's claims that Illinois Governor Pritzker hasn't requested any help, the governor has actually publicly stated that he would welcome federal assistance as long as it's the right kind.
We want more help. You know what kind of help we want? Civilian law enforcement help. We would like ATF agents. We would like FBI, again, to coordinate with our local law enforcement to help catch perpetrators of crimes. If they would do that, we would welcome that.
Also, this administration has been cutting funding or threatening to cut funding for some of the very organizations and programs that were started to reduce crime by providing citizens with support, opportunity, community, and guidance. Now, if the goal were truly to reduce crime, why would they do that? Also, you might not hear about this much in the media, but crime in Chicago has already been dropping.
Chicago police data shows that compared to last year, violent crime in the city is down 22%.
In fact, some of the news stories cited in that White House press release include statements about how crime has been trending downward. Murders were down 32% year-to-date in the city as of June 29. Most violent crime has been dropping this year in Chicago. The last 12 months have also seen fewer gun violence victims, fatal and non-fatal, than any year since 2013. Wow, all the people who rant about crime must be really happy about that. Let's see what they have to say. Yes, Chicago crime really is down. Weird, there was a drive-by shooting as school was getting out today in Albany Park. Homicides down, shootings down, violent crime down. 6 dead, 27 hurt in Chicago weekend shootings. I have seen this over and over again. Chicago's declining crime rate is mentioned and then someone replies, "But there was a crime that just happened recently." Yeah, no one said the crime rate is zero. It's just trending downward. So they either do that or they respond by saying the data is being faked. The White House press release kind of pushes this idea too, and I'll tell you why I say kind of. It says, Chicago has also come under scrutiny over discrepancies in its homicide data reporting, which is misleading in the context of this press release. If you go to the article it links, the story is about how the FBI is underreporting homicides. So the statement, Chicago has also come under scrutiny over discrepancies in its homicide data reporting, is technically true, but the discrepancies are a result of Chicago reporting a higher homicide rate than what the FBI is reporting. Not only is crime improving, but also as of this year, Chicago is no longer America's most rat-infested city. It dropped down to number 2. We did it! Haters don't want to talk about any of the positives of Chicago. They don't want anything that goes against the narrative of Chicago being a war zone or a shithole or a ghetto or a hellhole. I think the truth of the matter is, as long as the politicians calling the shots are Democrats, these people do not want Chicago to do well. If Chicago's crime magically stopped completely tomorrow before the president intervened, these people would not be happy. They'd find something else to bitch about, or they'd make up more fake stories about crime. This is all politically motivated. They only want the city to do better if there are Republican politicians in charge.